Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another All In Together Impact Talk. I'm Kiera Powell, the Senior Manager of Programming and Events for AIT, and today I have the extreme pleasure of speaking with one of my dearest and oldest friends, Lori Pitts. She is a social justice warrior, actor, director, improv guru, and the founder of Voices Unbarred and the producing artistic director of the Ally Theater Company. Today, we'll be talking about her journey as a Black woman in theater and her social justice work and the lessons she's learned along the way. Hey, Lori.
Hello, good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm so excited we get to have this conversation. For people who don't know what Voices Unbarred is, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, so Voices Unbarred is a nonprofit, and we work with people impacted by incarceration through theater. So we use theater and theater of the oppressed activities to kind of help them create performances that explore issues related to incarceration, help them tell their stories, and advocate for the change they want to see in the system.
I remember when you first had this idea and we talked about it when I came to visit you in DC. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really big. And I don't know how she's going to do it. She's a Black woman going to work in male prisons. Like, what led you to choose this particular theater expression? And what were some of the biggest hurdles that you faced in bringing that vision to reality?
Yeah, well, so I found Theater of the Oppressed in college. I took a course called Theater for Social Justice, and I don't know, it all clicked for me. I don't know if I already thought that way and this gave me words for it, or if I completely just shifted kind of how I was thinking to align with this class because I loved it so much. But when I found the method of Theater of the Oppressed, which was created by a guy named Augusto Bawal, and I just loved that it was about the people and that it wasn't like you had to have some sort of special skill. Anyone could use this tool to create change. And I had always been called to create some sort of change in my life. But I was also called to theater, but I didn't feel like the performance aspect of theater was connecting with me completely, even though I loved it. So just finding this way of using theater to actually make a huge change in the world just really spoke to me.
Congregating on a corner is what we be. Walking from school, we stop to debate an issue of interest, you see. Suddenly, lights flashing, sirens blazing, doors fly open, guns in our face thrust swiftly. 2 officers are upon us with distrust.
When I moved to DC, I started doing that through other nonprofits that I worked for and kind of on the side. And then I had this idea because I was like, who is the most oppressed in our American society? And those who are incarcerated just kept coming to the top because it's so connected to all these different issues like race and poverty and class and ability to get a job and neighborhood. It's connected to so many things. And so I felt like if I could use my talents and skills here, I could really help to have an impact. And we don't just work in male prisons. We do work in women's prisons now too. And we work with, so we have expanded since we had that first conversation together, which is exciting. But yeah, I think the power of theater is that it has both an individual impact where you feel empowered to tell your story and people are listening, and it helps you explore yourself and your world and society, and it can reflect society and it can question society, all those things on an individual level. But then through our work, we're also helping them advocate for those changes and bringing in other people into the conversation. And we partner with policy organizations so that these stories and policies that we're creating can actually go forth and become a real tangible change. So it's just kind of a multi-layered approach to creating change that I love.
Yeah. And it's brilliant and beautiful. And I love that I get to talk to you about it. How do you, I think for most people, when we talk about the term civics, it's like, oh, it's voting, it's this, it's that, very specific black and white issues. But I think something that is so beautiful about the work that you're doing is this is civics. This is you being engaged in your community and helping to bridge the divide of otherness. What would you say are some of the biggest lessons or impacts that you've seen through the work that you've done with Voices Unbarred?
Yeah, well, I think there's several. I'm going to cheat and talk about a couple here
I love
because it's multifaceted. So I would say with the people we directly work with, like who are either currently or formerly incarcerated, I think the impact I hear from them the most is like, this is a place where you can heal from trauma. Like theater is fun. And also like we've built this community who've all experienced similar things and who can talk about it and feel supported. And we pay them for their work with us. So it's like just a really supportive, stable community where they can explore these issues in a fun and safe way. But then also like, I always think about this quote from one of the first people we ever worked with. He was like, I like kind of had forgotten that I was human and you made me feel human again. Like people wanting to listen to me and like, oh yeah, I have valid lived experience that I can share. So I think to me, that's like a huge impact that our program has. And then on the advocacy side, I think like people who come to our programs and our performances get to interact directly with somebody who has been impacted by incarceration. And a lot of the people in our audiences have never met somebody who's been incarcerated. And so it's a huge bridge kind of being built. Like I've heard audience members kind of be like, well, they were funny. And like, you're like, yeah, they're just like normal humans, right? And they're like, no, I know that. But you know, you see it happening where you're like, oh yeah, we have this narrative that like these people are just different and bad and they did something wrong. But we forget that it's more nuanced. And so just by having these people in dialogue in the same space is so important and like a huge impact. And I'll comment on like what you're saying about civics. It's like many people are like, politics or voting or that's all hard, or I don't have a voice in it. But I think by doing it through Theater of the Oppressed, it's an easy entrance to that work. And so you're like, oh, I just watched this play about like a real experience. And then I was like, couldn't we fix that by doing X, Y, and Z? And now you've just created a policy without having to go to like a policy class and like attend an event that might seem boring or anything like that. So it's just like a good impact of this program is like bringing people into that space in a low lift type of way. Again, we're having this individual impact. We're kind of bringing in the community, but all of this is in service of like changing the system as we know it and reimagining it. So Theater of the Oppressed is meant to examine the structures around you and question like why they are how they are. And then the activities actually help you re-envision a new way or like think outside of our current systems. And so by having this individual impact and bringing the community in together, we not only destabilize the prison system how it currently is, because you know we're giving people autonomy to like be creative, which is not something that normally happens in a prison. We're also offering job skills and life skills and payment, which are all three things that are very important to reduce recidivism and the chance that the people we work with go back to prison. But then also we're like creating these events where we're reimagining policies and the prison system entirely. So we're like, how else could we hold people accountable and have consequences, but still value human life and rehabilitation over punishment and those things through this work. So yeah, we have like a bunch of little impacts in different areas. And it's just really exciting. I don't know, to see.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about it. And it's to your point of, I think it becomes so easy for people to see something as very, the hard line. You did something wrong, you're going to be punished, and it is what it is. But there are so many layers to that, and it's not ever quite so simple. And the idea that we just kind of throw people away, I find to be so incredibly depressing. And I think that's something that is not only incredible about the work that you're doing, that it's taking it beyond just a punishment. And like, how do we also then still allow people to be productive members of our society, because they should be, and that's important.
Well, and they are part of our society.
Yes,
So we can
yes.
pretend all we want and push people away, but they are going to return. And what have we done to support them, or figure out why what happened, or figure out what resources are needed? And I think that's a misconception that like is common, that people are just like, only people who've done something wrong are in prison. Also, that if you've done something wrong, you deserve endless punishment and no covers, and to not be treated like a human. And I forgot my third one, but you just said something that I was like, yes.
They still have value. They're a person. I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting, because I don't think we really talk about that subject in school. We don't, the things that we learn and the way that we look at our prison system. I think about the way that we grew up, and it's like what I saw in media, the very limited knowledge that you were given in school. But to understand that the US is one of the biggest proponents of people incarcerated anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the population that's within those systems, and it's primarily Black and brown individuals. And you're like, but they're still the minority group in the country. So how does that work?
Exactly. Yes. And that you just reminded me of my third thing I was going to say was that this misconception too, I think, of like the true crime space kind of makes it seem like every crime is this terrible, pre-thought out, endless murders. And while some of them are, and like I still believe they deserve to be treated like a human, just like that most people in prison aren't that. And like I think we forget to kind of like look at it more nuanced, of like, okay, how can we create different spaces for different types of crimes or people, instead of just either not thinking about anyone at all, just kind of throwing them away, or thinking of everyone as like this criminal, like who's like this, and not at all like anyone I would know, when that's not the case.
Really, I think it's so easy for people to forget. We're all like one choice, one circumstance away from living a completely different existence. You have no control over the family that you're born into, the circumstances around that, the privileges you do or you don't have, and the corners that you sometimes find yourself backed into. And not that it makes those choices always right, but it's just more complicated than I think we give it credit for.
Exactly.
In your mind, what is somebody who completes this program? What's a successful outcome of somebody who does one of the workshops with Voices Unbarred?
Yeah, well, so we have different programs. So like our programming that's in facilities, though, those are usually like 12 weeks long. So successful outcome would be, they've created a full-length play and performed it, and it's about their life and their stories and their ideas for change. And they get to perform it and feel confident and feel like they have more tools to be their own advocate and like a change agent in society. That is the dream. And then ideally, if and when they are released, they can still work with us and, see us as a community, and a place where they can continue to make change. I think then we have programming that's more policy focused. So our Rehearsal for Change series is in partnership with DC Justice Lab. And that's the one where, audience members come and actually build policies together based on scenes that we present and games that kind of help them start to think differently. So like for that, great outcome is actual real policies that come out of this. that DC Justice Lab can then incorporate into their work and propose to DC Council, and create some real shifts.
What's been one of your favorite policies or moments to come out of that lab work?
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed exploring. We explored reparations last summer, and particularly in DC, and particularly around like people who are incarcerated for marijuana possession. And now it's decriminalized and legal in many places, but all of these people are still in prison. And also the difference between like people now who have dispensaries and are like making so much money off of this.
Tons of money.
Like, yeah, like where I found it very interesting to explore those policies and kind of hear where people's minds went around that. But in terms of like a single policy that has come out of one of these, I really enjoyed this idea of like, we explored police and youth interaction, because there's a bill kind of up for discussion here in DC around that, and how youth, I'm not even going to go into all of it, but how youth like right now actually are not required to have a lawyer with them, or lawyer present, like, and they don't need a parent present. So like just really kind of putting
minors in DC?
Yeah. So this amendment will be saying like that lawyer like has to be present at all times from the beginning, not an adult, but like a lawyer. So I might be misrepresenting like the tiny details of it, but yeah, that's a big part of it. And so like through that discussion, we came up with various policies of how police can engage with the community, and particularly youth. And I was so interested in this idea of, instead of having a number you have to reach of like arrests, it's like your how do I put it? Your what is the word I'm looking for? You're given you're giving accolades. You're given accolades for every youth like you don't arrest. It's like every interaction you have with youth, every time you like have a positive interaction that you de-escalate. Thank you. Every time you de-escalate, actually that's what gets you merits. And so we didn't flesh it out completely, so I can't tell you like specifically about how that would work, but I was like, that is interesting and a way to flip it on its head, because we're so used to being like, you know, do this, this, and this, and that's what we count. And like, then you're, I still can't think of that word. You're still given accolades for.
Well, basically, I feel like what you're explaining is a rethinking of the reward / just award system in which a police department works.
Yes, thank you for coming up with all the words for me. Reward, awards, it's simple.
Anytime. That's that 15 years of friendship right there. I'm like, yes. I know what she's trying to say. Yes. I am so curious how this passion project went from something that you were doing on your own to something that was then incorporated into the Ally Theater Company, and kind of what that journey looked like.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild for me even still to like, it still feels like it's just an idea in my head, and now it's expanding and people are buying into it. And yeah, it's very exciting. In 2021, it was announced that I'd become the artistic director of Ally Theater Company, and then Voices Unbarred would become Ally's main programming. And that happened because Ally Theater Company was already established. It's about a year older than our program. And I was one of their artistic allies. I was a performer with them and did a lot of work with them. And we were already working on a project of like how we could collaborate when the pandemic hit. And so I think, you know, they were kind of on hiatus because we couldn't do performances and all that kind of stuff. And I think their internal conversations, there was a very supportive woman, a Black woman, who was like, what if we pass off leadership to Lori, who's like already running an organization and like could use the infrastructure that Ally already has. So like, instead of shutting down, we'll be good allies and like kind of pass this along. And so they called me one day and pitched the idea to me, and I was like, what? I was not expecting that at all. Like, how cool. But yeah, just like an immense amount of support and just like honoring the work that I had already done, and then like helping kind of infuse it, just like kind of burst this new kind of form that we're doing here. And then yeah, it's like, it's wild to think. Yeah, I had a founding board, like kind of came in. I kept a board member from Ally's previous board. And then over the past year, we've just kind of been building and seeing where our programmings are going to intersect and where they're going to be separate. And it's just really exciting, like the possibilities to combine these two different communities. Because like I said, Voices Unbarred is doing a lot of like workshops and policy and like working directly with people impacted by incarceration. And I think Ally Theater gives us an opportunity to bring in people who might still want to be a little less active in their engagement, but just like, are like, I like theater, I want to come see it. Ally Theater will still allow them to have that interaction and engagement with people impacted by incarceration, but now just through a traditional play format. So I think it's very exciting, and I don't know of another theater doing something similar like that, but I think it just adds another layer of like how we can impact the system.
I love to see this seed, this tiny idea that you had where you're like, I'm not sure, and to see how it's grown into this massive tree and the different branches that it's taken on and the way that you're impacting policy and really engaging your community in this unique and beautiful journey. I'm so proud to know you, and I don't know, I just love it.
Well, and it's vital too, right? Like if you had asked me at that first conversation where I had this like little seed of an idea, I could not have created all of this at that moment. Like what you're saying about including your community is so important to how we've gotten to here. It's like I've incorporated feedback from our original participants and then our community advocates who are formerly incarcerated. They helped shape a lot of the programming because during the pandemic, we weren't able to go into facilities anymore. And so I was like, okay, I guess we'll just take a break. And they were like, what? No, we want to create, like, let's get on Zoom and like, let's create stuff. So I was like, oh, okay. And so they're really instrumental in like kind of helping push me on like what's important and what they want to do. And so I really incorporate their voice. And then again, like ally people coming in, like everyone adds their own little layer to help make this successful and impactful. So yeah, it's very cool to see.
It's amazing, truly. I think somebody could have had this idea and it would have still been lovely and beautiful, but without the passion that you bring to the work, that also can't be downplayed. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and like give you all the kudos for that.
Appreciate that.
What do you want audiences who walk away from seeing the work that you guys are doing to what's the impact or the takeaway for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think always we want to shift the narrative a bit. So like I want them to walk away having reconsidered something that maybe they've either never thought about or had strong feelings about, such as like, these are the types of people who are in prison, or this is what prison is for, or I think everyone should be punished. I hope that we've started a kind of conversation between us and within themselves. I hope that we've built some empathy through that conversation and being in direct dialogue with somebody with this experience. I hope we're building kind of an army of advocates in a way, so they have these tools and the stories, and they could go off and use these tools and ideas elsewhere, particularly in examining systems around them, like the activities we do, like I said, help them see like, oh, I've never even thought about why stop means stop. That's just always what it's meant, right? but like through our activities, as they go through their life, they can be like, why is this how this is? I've never thought about that. And so I think that just creates better citizens in general. And then for our audience members who are also impacted by incarceration themselves, I hope that they feel honored and like they're valued and their stories are important, and that they've had experience. Sorry, what you cut out?
Be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, that they've seen their story on stage and seen that, okay, like what I've been through and what I have to say is important. So then they can go off and also feel empowered in their own community and life. And hopefully they also had so much fun that they called me up and are like, I want to do it too.
I don't know how you could see this work and not want to be a part of it. And speaking of, how can people get involved in the work that you're doing?
Well, the most impactful way people can get involved is by donating. We are a small grassroots nonprofit. And like I said, we pay our participants and our community advocates for the work they do. So just always having that support so that they can get paid, not just minimum wage, but well, is so important to our sustainability and continuing to be able to do these programs. Also, we have a newsletter that you could go sign up through our website at voicesunbarred.org. And that's a great way to keep in touch with upcoming events and also other ways to get involved as things grow and change. And then we have social media, also a great way to see pictures and things that are coming up. And those are like the key ways to stay in touch, support us, be involved. We do always have smaller projects kind of come up that we do need help with, but we go to the newsletter to ask for that support. So I encourage everyone to sign up there.
Awesome. You will be one of the attendees of this year's 4th annual Black Women Lead in Washington, D.C., and we're so excited to have you. Yeah. In terms of civics and culture, what do you see as the importance or the significance of having convenings like this with, you know, a large amount of Black women who are sharing lived experiences, journeys, etc.?
Yeah, well, and also resources. I think having a lot of people together always brings the best ideas forth because you're sharing resources, you're sharing similar experiences, but also different things where you're like, oh, well, have you thought of this? And like, no, I hadn't. So I always just think having that group creative think can get you to stronger places. And just like our work can help you like support each other, feel seen, and revitalize you for your work as you continue out. So I'm super excited to be there. Yeah.
Well, I'm super thrilled to have you. And if you loved this conversation as much as I did, you definitely need to join us at Black Women Lead and come meet Lori in person and hear more about her incredible work. It's going to be happening June 15th at the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C., and you don't want to miss it. You can sign up on our website, aitogether.org, and we hope to see you there. Thank you so much, Lori. I have had the best time.
Yes, same. Thank you for having me.